The autumn sun filtered through the wide windows of Maplewood Elementary School, casting warm patches of light across the polished linoleum floors. Children's laughter echoed through the hallways as parents guided their little ones toward their new classrooms, backpacks bouncing against small shoulders. It was the first day of kindergarten, a milestone filled with equal parts excitement and anxiety for everyone involved. Eleanor Brooks stood at the entrance of her classroom, greeting each child with a warm smile and gentle words of encouragement. After 23 years of teaching, she'd learned to spot the nervous ones immediately, the children who clung to their parents' legs, the ones whose eyes filled with tears at the thought of being left behind. This year would be no different, she thought, as she watched a mother pry her sobbing son's fingers from her skirt. Among the stream of children entering room 104, one little girl caught Eleanor's attention. She was small for her age, with dark hair pulled into two neat braids and enormous brown eyes that seemed to take in everything around her. She carried a worn purple backpack that looked far too large for her tiny frame, the straps digging into her shoulders under its weight. "Good morning, sweetheart," Eleanor said, kneeling down to meet the girl at eye level. "What's your name?" "Ava," the girl whispered, her voice barely audible above the morning chaos. "Welcome to kindergarten, Ava. I'm Ms. Brooks, and I'm so happy you're here." Eleanor glanced up at the woman standing behind Ava, a thin, severe-looking woman with her hair pulled back so tightly it seemed to stretch her features. The woman didn't smile. She simply nodded once at Eleanor before turning and walking away without saying goodbye to her daughter. Eleanor made a mental note of it but didn't dwell. Every family was different, and she'd learned long ago not to judge parenting styles on first impressions. She guided Ava into the classroom, where colorful alphabet posters decorated the walls, and small desks were arranged in neat rows. Each desk had a name tag, and Eleanor helped Ava find hers, right in the middle of the third row. "Here you are, sweetheart. This is your special spot. You can put your backpack in your cubby over there, and then come sit down." Ava's grip on her backpack straps tightened. She shook her head slightly, her eyes fixed on the floor. "It's okay, honey. Your backpack will be safe there. We'll get it out later when we need it." "I need to keep it," Ava said softly. Eleanor hesitated. It wasn't unusual for children to want familiar objects close by on their first day. "All right," she said gently. "You can keep it with you for now." As the other children settled into their seats, chattering excitedly about their new pencil cases and lunch boxes, Eleanor noticed something odd. While every other child had taken their seat, Ava remained standing beside her desk, both hands clutching the straps of her oversized backpack. "Ava, sweetheart, you can sit down now," Eleanor said, approaching the girl's desk. Ava didn't respond. She simply stood there, her small body rigid, her eyes focused somewhere in the middle distance. Eleanor tried again, her voice warm and encouraging. "It's okay, honey. See how all your new friends are sitting. You can sit too. That's your very own chair." "I can't," Ava whispered. "Why not, sweetheart?" Ava's lips pressed together in a thin line. She didn't answer. Eleanor decided not to push. First-day jitters manifested in many ways, and perhaps Ava just needed time to adjust. She moved on with the morning routine, introducing herself to the class, explaining the classroom rules, and starting them on a simple coloring activity to help them relax. But Ava remained standing. "Before we dive in, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. If you enjoy educational stories like this, be sure to like the video, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share it with someone who'd love it too. The first hour passed, then the second. During story time, when Eleanor gathered the children on the colorful rug at the front of the room, Ava stood at the back of the group while the others sat cross-legged. During snack time, she stood at the table, carefully eating the crackers Eleanor provided, her backpack still strapped to her shoulders. When the children returned to their desks for a simple counting exercise, Ava stood beside her chair, leaning slightly against the desk as if her legs were growing tired. By lunchtime, Eleanor's concern had deepened. She watched as Ava stood in the cafeteria line, received her tray, and then stood at the end of a table to eat, while the other children sat around her. Some of them were starting to notice. "Why is she standing?" a boy named Marcus asked loudly, pointing at Ava. "Everyone is different, Marcus," Eleanor said firmly. "We're all friends here, and we respect each other's choices." But she wasn't sure it was a choice. The way Ava stood, so still, so tense as if following an invisible rule, didn't seem like the behavior of a child making her own decision. It seemed like fear. The pattern continued throughout the week. Every single day, from the moment Ava entered the classroom until the moment her mother picked her up, she stood. She never sat in her chair, never relaxed on the reading rug, never took a moment to rest during the long school day. Her legs would tremble by afternoon, and Eleanor noticed her shifting her weight from foot to foot, trying to find relief. The other children's curiosity turned to mockery by the end of the second week. "Statue girl," a child called out during recess, and others laughed. "Why are you so weird?" another asked. Ava never responded to the teasing. She simply stood quietly wherever she was supposed to be, her expression blank, her fingers wrapped tightly around those backpack straps. Eleanor intervened whenever she witnessed the bullying, but she couldn't be everywhere at once. She noticed Ava eating lunch alone, standing at the edge of the playground alone, existing in a bubble of isolation that broke Eleanor's heart. During the third week, Eleanor tried a different approach. She pulled a small chair next to her desk and invited Ava to come sit with her during independent work time. "I thought you might like to work here today, Ava, right next to me. What do you think?" Ava approached slowly, her eyes dropping to the chair. For a moment, Eleanor thought she might actually sit, but then Ava's whole body went rigid, and she shook her head quickly. "I can't sit, Ms. Brooks." "Why not, sweetheart? Can you tell me?" "I'm not allowed." The word sent a chill through Eleanor's chest. "What do you mean you're not allowed? Who told you that?" Ava's eyes filled with tears, but they didn't fall. "I just can't. I'll get in trouble." "You won't get in trouble here, Ava, I promise. This is a safe place." But Ava just shook her head and returned to her desk, where she continued standing, completing her work while balanced on tired legs. That afternoon, Eleanor requested a meeting with the school counselor, Mrs. Patricia Chen. Patricia had been with the district for 15 years and had seen nearly everything. They met in Patricia's small office, surrounded by soft pillows, fidget toys, and motivational posters. "I'm worried about one of my students," Eleanor began, explaining Ava's behavior in detail. "She hasn't sat down once in 3 weeks. Not once, Patricia. And when I ask her about it, she says she's not allowed, and that she'll get in trouble." Patricia frowned, making notes on her pad. "Has she shown any other concerning behaviors? Any signs of physical abuse?" "I haven't seen any bruises or marks, but she wears long sleeves every day, even when it's warm. And that backpack, she never takes it off. She won't put it in her cubby like the other children." "I'll schedule some time with her," Patricia said. "Sometimes children open up more easily when they're away from the classroom environment. Let me see what I can find out." 2 days later, Patricia called Ava down to her office during art class. Eleanor waited anxiously for feedback, checking the clock every few minutes until Patricia finally appeared at her classroom door during the children's outdoor recess. "Well?" Eleanor asked, hope and dread mixing in her stomach. Patricia's expression was troubled. "She wouldn't sit in my office either. She stood the entire time, even when I offered her a beanbag chair and explained it was just for our special talk. When I asked her why, she gave me the same answer she gave you. I'm not allowed to sit." I tried approaching it from different angles, asking if it hurt to sit, if someone told her not to sit, if something happened when she sits. She just kept repeating that she can't. Did you learn anything else? She's extremely guarded, answers in short sentences, doesn't make eye contact, shows classic signs of anxiety. I asked about home, and she said her parents are very strict, but wouldn't elaborate. I asked if she felt safe at home, and she nodded. Yes, but Eleanor, she was trembling when she said it. Eleanor pressed her fingers to her temples. So what do we do? I'm going to document everything and continue monitoring. I'll try to schedule regular check-ins with her, build some trust. In the meantime, keep observing. If you notice anything else, any marks, any concerning statements, any physical signs, let me know immediately. Eleanor agreed, though frustration gnawed at her. Something was clearly wrong, but without concrete evidence, their hands were tied. She couldn't call Child Protective Services because a child wouldn't sit down. She needed more. She started watching Ava even more closely. She noticed the girl never played with the other children, never raised her hand to answer questions, never volunteered for anything. During music class, when the children were supposed to sit in a circle for singing time, Ava stood behind the circle. During library time, she stood in front of the shelves while other children sprawled on cushions with their books. By the fourth week, the physical toll on Ava was becoming impossible to ignore. Eleanor watched the little girl's legs shake during morning meeting, saw her lean heavily against her desk during lessons, noticed her face growing pale by afternoon. The backpack, always present, seemed to grow heavier each day, weighing down her small shoulders and forcing her to stand slightly hunched. During lunch one day, Eleanor sat across from Ava, who stood at the table picking at her sandwich. "Ava, honey, your lunch looks delicious. What do you have there?" "Peanut butter," Ava said quietly. "That's my favorite too. Are you enjoying school?" Ava nodded, but her eyes told a different story. They were ringed with dark circles, and Eleanor realized the child looked exhausted in a way that went beyond normal kindergarten tiredness. "Are you sleeping okay at home?" Another nod, but Ava's fingers trembled as she set down her sandwich. "Ava, I want you to know that you can talk to me about anything. If something is bothering you or if you're worried about something, I'm here to listen. You're safe with me." For just a moment, Ava's carefully maintained mask cracked. Her lower lip quivered and her eyes filled with tears. Eleanor's heart clenched and she reached out instinctively, placing her hand gently on the table near Ava's. But then, as quickly as it had appeared, the vulnerability vanished. Ava blinked rapidly, straightened her shoulders despite the weight of her backpack, and nodded. "I'm fine, Ms. Brooks. Thank you." The formal response from a 5-year-old chilled Eleanor to her core. No kindergartner spoke like that naturally. It was learned, rehearsed, coached. That afternoon, Eleanor noticed something she'd somehow missed before. As Ava stood beside her desk during math time, Eleanor approached from behind to help another student. That's when she saw it, a small wince of pain as Ava shifted her weight and the way she very carefully avoided bending her knees fully when she moved. "Ava, are your legs hurting, sweetheart?" "No, Ms. Brooks." "Are you sure? You can tell me if they are." "We could ask the nurse to take a look." "I'm fine." The words came out quickly, almost desperately. "Please don't call anyone. I'm fine." The fear in that small voice made Eleanor's decision. After school, she went straight to Patricia's office. "We need to do something," Eleanor said, closing the door behind her. "I think there's abuse happening. I don't have proof, but everything about this situation screams neglect, at minimum, possibly worse." Patricia set down her pen, her expression grave. "Tell me exactly what you've observed." Eleanor laid it all out. The constant standing, the fear, the physical exhaustion. The oversized backpack Ava refused to release, the formal way she spoke, the terror when Eleanor suggested calling someone. As she talked, Patricia's frown deepened. "I'm going to try one more session with her," Patricia said. "Tomorrow morning. But Eleanor, if we're going to make a report, we need something concrete. The system is overwhelmed, and without clear evidence of abuse or neglect, they might not even investigate. So we just wait until she's hurt badly enough? No. We document, we observe, and we look for an opening, something that gives us cause to intervene." That opening came 3 days later, during art class. The children were working on a painting project, creating autumn trees with their handprints as leaves. The classroom buzzed with excited chatter as small hands pressed into paint and then onto paper. Ava stood at her easel, carefully dipping her fingers into the orange paint when it happened. She reached for the yellow paint, misjudged the distance, and bumped her backpack against the easel. The heavy pack shifted, throwing her off balance. Ava stumbled, her arms windmilling as she tried to catch herself, and the backpack slipped off one shoulder. The weight of it pulled her down, and she fell hard onto her knees with a sharp cry of pain. Eleanor was at her side in an instant. "Ava, are you okay?" The little girl's face had gone white, and tears streamed down her cheeks, the first time Eleanor had seen her actually cry. Ava's hands clutched at her knees, and she rocked slightly, small whimpers escaping her lips. "It's okay, sweetheart. Let me see. Did you hurt your knees?" "No," Ava gasped. "Please don't look. Please!" But the backpack had fallen completely off in the tumble, landing on its side with a heavy thud that seemed far too loud for a child's school bag. The top had come unzipped, and its contents were partially visible. Eleanor's breath caught. Inside the backpack, she could see plastic containers, the kind used for food storage, but through the translucent plastic, the contents looked discolored and old. There were wadded-up clothes that appeared dirty, a small blanket covered in stains, and something that looked like a stuffed animal that had seen much better days. But what made Eleanor's hands go cold was the small spiral notebook that had fallen halfway out, its cover bent and worn. "Ava, honey, let me help you up," Eleanor said gently, her mind racing. She needed to see if Ava was hurt, but she also needed to understand what she was seeing in that backpack. "My backpack," Ava sobbed. "I have to put it back. I have to pack it right." "It's okay. We'll pack it together. But first, let me make sure you're not hurt." Ava was still on her knees, trembling, her hands pressed to her legs. Eleanor gently touched her shoulder. "Ava, I need to see if you scraped your knees when you fell. I'm just going to look, okay? I won't hurt you." "No!" Ava's voice rose to a near scream, startling the other children. Several of them had stopped painting to watch. "You can't. I'll get in trouble. Please, Miss Brooks, please." Eleanor's heart shattered at the terror in that voice. Okay. You're okay, sweetheart. I won't look if you don't want me to." She turned to her teaching assistant, who had been helping other children. "Mrs. Rodriguez, can you please take the class to the reading corner for story time? I'm going to help Ava clean up here." Once the other children were safely occupied at the other end of the classroom, Eleanor turned her full attention back to Ava. The little girl was still on the floor, now frantically trying to stuff the contents back into her backpack with shaking hands. "Here, let me help," Eleanor said softly, kneeling beside her. "I have to do it right," Ava whispered urgently. "It has to be packed exactly right or they'll know." "Who will know, sweetheart?" Ava didn't answer, just kept shoving items into the bag. Eleanor reached for the notebook that had fallen out, and Ava's hand shot out, grabbing it. "That's mine." "I know, honey. I was just going to hand it to you." But in Ava's haste to snatch it back, the notebook fell open, and Eleanor saw the pages. They were filled with clumsy, childish handwriting, the kind of letters a kindergartner would make when first learning to write. But the words made Eleanor's blood run cold. "Don't sit, don't sit, don't sit," written over and over on one page. On another, "If I sit, I get in trouble." And on a third page, in slightly neater writing that appeared to be an adult's hand, "Perfect posture makes perfect children. Sitting is laziness." Eleanor felt her hands begin to shake. She looked at Ava, who had frozen, her eyes locked on the notebook, her face a mask of absolute terror. "Ava," Eleanor said, her voice gentle but firm, "I need you to tell me the truth. What happens if you sit down? Why will you get in trouble?" Ava's whole body was trembling now. Tears poured down her face. "I'm not supposed to tell. They said I can never tell." "Sweetheart, you're safe here. Nothing you tell me will get you in trouble with me. I promise." "But they'll know." "They always know." "Who always knows?" "Mommy and Daddy. They have rules. So many rules." Ava's voice broke into sobs. "I try so hard to follow all the rules, but there are so many, and I forget sometimes, and then I have to be corrected." Eleanor's professional training warred with her emotional response. She wanted to pull this child into her arms and promise her everything would be okay. But she also knew she needed to hear what Ava was saying, needed to document it, needed to handle this correctly. "Can you tell me about the rule about sitting?" Ava hiccuped, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "Sitting anywhere except at home makes me dirty. Mommy says the world is full of germs and bad influences, and if I sit in dirty places, I'll bring the dirt home." She checks. "Every day when I get home, she checks." "How does she check, Ava?" The little girl's lips pressed together and fresh tears spilled over. "She looks at my legs, at the backs of my knees and my bottom and my thighs. If there are any marks from sitting, any wrinkles in my clothes, anything that shows I sat down, then I have to be corrected." Eleanor's hands clenched into fists. "What does corrected mean?" "I have to stand in the correction corner, for hours, sometimes all night, and I don't get dinner, and Daddy uses the ruler on the backs of my legs where the sitting would have been, so I remember not to do it again." The words hung in the air between them, and Eleanor felt her professional composure crumbling. She had suspected abuse, had seen the signs, but hearing it confirmed in such matter-of-fact terms from a 5-year-old made her want to weep. "How long have these rules been happening, sweetheart?" "Always, ever since I can remember. There are rules for everything. How to stand, how to walk, how to hold my hands, what to say, when to speak. I have a book at home with all the rules written in it. Mommy and Daddy made it for me so I could be perfect. And the backpack? Why do you always carry it?" Ava looked at the bag, now clutched against her chest. "It has everything I need in case I have to stay somewhere. Mommy says I have to be prepared. The food is in case I get hungry but can't ask for anything. The clothes are in case mine get dirty. The blanket is in case I get cold. And my notebook is where I practice my letters and write the rules so I don't forget them." Eleanor realized she was looking at a survival kit, a 5-year-old's emergency supplies for getting through a world her parents had convinced her was hostile and dangerous. "Ava, can I see the backs of your legs, just to make sure you didn't hurt them when you fell?" The terror returned to Ava's face. "You can't tell them you saw. Please, Ms. Brooks, if you tell them someone saw, they'll be so angry. They'll say I wasn't careful enough. I won't tell them anything that will get you in trouble, I promise, but I need to see if you're hurt." Ava hesitated for what felt like an eternity. Then, slowly, she stood up and turned around. With trembling hands, she pulled up the back of her skirt just enough for Eleanor to see the backs of her knees and lower thighs. Eleanor had to consciously control her reaction to keep from gasping aloud. The backs of Ava's legs were covered in bruises, some faded to yellow and green, others darker and more recent. There were linear marks, clearly from some kind of implement, and they overlapped in a pattern that told a story of repeated punishment over time. "You can put your skirt down, sweetheart," Eleanor said, her voice remarkably steady despite the rage and heartbreak churning inside her. "Thank you for showing me. You're very brave." Ava turned back around, her eyes searching Eleanor's face. "Are you going to tell?" Eleanor knelt down so she was at eye level with the little girl. "Ava, what's happening to you at home is not okay. Those rules your parents have aren't fair, and the punishments they give you are wrong. You shouldn't have to live like this. But they're just making me perfect. They love me. They tell me all the time that they love me so much that they have to train me properly." The words were clearly rehearsed, a mantra this child had been fed over and over. Eleanor felt sick. "Real love doesn't hurt, sweetheart. People who love you don't hit you or make you stand for hours or take away your food. That's not love. That's harm." Ava's face crumpled. "But if they're wrong, then everything is wrong. All the rules, all the corrections, all the times I tried so hard to be good enough, it was all for nothing." Eleanor pulled Ava into a gentle hug, feeling the little girl's thin frame shake with sobs. "You are good enough, Ava. You are more than good enough. You are perfect exactly as you are, and you always have been. What's happening isn't your fault. None of this is your fault." They stayed like that for several minutes, Ava crying into Eleanor's shoulder, while Eleanor stroked her hair and murmured reassurances. When the sobs finally subsided into hiccups, Eleanor pulled back gently. "Ava, I need to make some phone calls to people who can help make sure you're safe. Do you understand?" Fresh panic flooded Ava's face. "You're going to take me away from Mommy and Daddy?" "I'm going to make sure you're safe. That's my most important job, keeping you safe." "But where will I go?" "I don't know yet, sweetheart, but I promise you'll be somewhere safe, where there are no rulers and no correction corners and no rules about sitting. Somewhere you can just be a little girl." Ava looked at her with those enormous brown eyes, and Eleanor saw something shift in them, a tiny spark of hope mixed with terror. "Will I ever see them again?" It was a question Eleanor couldn't answer. "I don't know, honey. But right now we need to focus on making sure you're okay. Can you do something for me? Can you sit in the reading corner with Mrs. Rodriguez and the other children while I make those phone calls?" Ava's eyes widened. "Sit? Yes, sweetheart. You can sit. You're allowed to sit. You should sit. Your legs must be so tired." Slowly, hesitantly, Ava nodded. Eleanor walked her to the reading corner where Mrs. Rodriguez was finishing a story about a caterpillar. The other children barely noticed as Ava approached, but Eleanor saw Mrs. Rodriguez's eyes widen slightly as Ava lowered herself onto one of the floor cushions. The little girl sat stiffly at first, as if the cushion might bite her. Then, gradually, her muscles began to relax. Her legs stretched out in front of her. Her shoulders lowered, and Eleanor saw her take a deep, shuddering breath. The breath of someone who'd been holding tension for so long, they'd forgotten what release felt like. Eleanor turned away before her tears could fall. She had phone calls to make. In the hallway outside her classroom, Eleanor pulled out her phone with shaking hands. First, she called Patricia Chen. "Patricia, it's Eleanor. I have concrete evidence. I need you in my classroom now, and we need to call Child Protective Services immediately." "What did you find?" "Bruises, a confession of ongoing physical abuse, evidence of severe emotional abuse and neglect. This child is being systematically harmed in the name of training her to be perfect." Patricia's voice went sharp with focus. "I'm on my way. Don't let her out of your sight." Next, Eleanor called the principal, Dr. Marcus Henderson, and gave him a brief overview. His response was immediate and decisive. "I'm calling CPS right now. Stay with her, Eleanor. Document everything you remember from the conversation while it's fresh. We'll handle this by the book." Within 20 minutes, Patricia, Dr. Henderson, and the school nurse, Mrs. Okoye, were gathered in the small conference room adjacent to Eleanor's classroom. Ava sat in the reading corner, now fully absorbed in the story, occasionally glancing at her legs as if amazed that she was actually allowed to sit. Eleanor recounted everything: the weeks of standing, the conversation, the contents of the backpack, the bruises, Ava's explanations about the rules and corrections. Mrs. Okoye documented the visible injuries with photos after getting Ava's quiet permission, speaking to her in a soft, reassuring voice that made the little girl feel safe rather than examined. Dr. Henderson was already on the phone with Child Protective Services, his voice grave as he relayed the situation. When he hung up, he turned to the group. "They're sending someone immediately. They'll be here within the hour to interview Ava and determine the next steps. In the meantime, we keep her here, keep her safe, and we do not contact the parents." "What happens when they come to pick her up?" Eleanor asked, her stomach knotting. "They won't be picking her up today," Dr. Henderson said firmly. "Once CPS makes the determination, and with what you've documented, they will, Ava will go into protective custody. The parents will be notified by the authorities, not by us." The hour that followed felt like the longest of Eleanor's life. She sat with Ava, reading stories, helping her with a simple puzzle, letting the little girl just be a child for what might be the first time in her life. Ava kept looking at Eleanor with wonder in her eyes. "I'm sitting," she whispered at one point, as if she couldn't quite believe it. "You are," Eleanor confirmed, smiling despite the tears threatening to fall. "How does it feel?" "My legs don't hurt anymore. Is this what it feels like for everyone else?" "Yes, sweetheart. This is normal. This is how it should be." When the CPS worker arrived, a kind-faced woman named Jennifer Martinez, who carried a worn leather bag and had the experienced eyes of someone who'd seen too much, Eleanor felt a wave of relief wash over her. Jennifer introduced herself to Ava, explained that she was there to help, and asked if Ava would be comfortable talking with her privately. Ava looked at Eleanor with frightened eyes. "Can Ms. Brooks stay?" "Of course," Jennifer said warmly. "Ms. Brooks can absolutely stay if that makes you feel safer." The interview was gentle but thorough. Jennifer asked Ava about her home life, her parents' rules, the punishments, the fear. Ava answered in a quiet voice, sometimes stopping to think, sometimes crying, but always truthful. When Jennifer asked to see the bruises, Ava looked at Eleanor first, seeking permission. Eleanor nodded encouragingly, and Ava showed Jennifer what she'd shown her teacher earlier. Jennifer's professional mask slipped for just a moment, a flash of anger crossing her face before she smoothed it away. She took more photos, made extensive notes, and asked Ava questions about how often the punishments happened, what else occurred at home, whether she felt safe there. "No," Ava finally whispered. "I'm always scared. I try so hard to follow all the rules, but there are so many and I always mess something up. And then the corrections happen and I promise myself I'll be better, but I'm not. I'm never good enough." "Oh, sweetheart," Jennifer said, and Eleanor could hear the emotion in her voice. "You are good enough. More than good enough. What's happening to you isn't about you not being good enough. It's about adults making very wrong choices." After the interview, Jennifer spoke privately with Dr. Henderson and Eleanor in the hallway, while Mrs. Okoye stayed with Ava. "This is one of the clearest cases of child abuse I've seen in a long time," Jennifer said quietly. "Severe physical abuse, emotional abuse, and what amounts to educational neglect, given that she's been unable to participate fully in school. I'm placing her in emergency protective custody immediately. I have a foster family on call who specializes in trauma cases. They'll take good care of her." "What about the parents?" Eleanor asked. "They'll be notified once Ava is safely placed. There will be an investigation, likely criminal charges for the physical abuse. The court will determine whether reunification is even a possibility. But given the severity and the systematic nature of the abuse, I wouldn't count on it." Eleanor felt relief and sadness in equal measure. Relief that Ava would be safe, sadness for the little girl who was about to have her entire world turned upside down, even if that world had been cruel. "Can I say goodbye to her?" Eleanor asked. "Of course. Take your time." Eleanor returned to the classroom where Ava was sitting, still sitting, Eleanor noted with a bittersweet smile, on a cushion, holding a book but not reading it. She looked up when Eleanor entered. "Are they going to take me away now?" Eleanor sat down beside her, not standing, sitting, showing Ava that it was okay, that this was normal. "Yes, sweetheart, but you're going to go somewhere safe. Somewhere with people who will be kind to you and take care of you. Will you visit me?" The question broke Eleanor's heart. "I don't know if I'll be allowed to, but I'll try. And you'll always be in my heart, Ava. Always." Ava threw her arms around Eleanor's neck, holding tight. "Thank you for believing me. Thank you for not making me stand." Eleanor hugged her back, tears finally falling freely. "You're welcome, sweetheart. You're so brave. You're going to be okay. I promise you, you're going to be okay." The transition happened quickly after that. Jennifer returned with a gentle smile and an extended hand. Ava clutched her worn backpack, which Jennifer allowed her to keep, understanding the security it provided, and walked out of the classroom with one last look back at Eleanor. The teacher stood in the doorway, watching until the little girl disappeared around the corner, then collapsed into her desk chair and wept. The aftermath was complicated and painful. That evening, Eleanor received a call from Dr. Henderson informing her that Ava's parents had been notified and had reacted with outrage and denial. They claimed they were simply raising their daughter with discipline and structure, that modern parenting was too soft, that their methods were based on old-fashioned values. They threatened legal action against the school, against Eleanor personally, against CPS. But the evidence was overwhelming. The bruises, the photos, Ava's testimony, the notebook filled with desperate reminders to follow impossible rules. It all painted a picture that even the best lawyer couldn't explain away. Within 48 hours, criminal charges were filed. Within a week, Ava's parents' rights were temporarily suspended, pending a full investigation and trial. Eleanor returned to her classroom the next day to find Ava's empty desk exactly as she'd left it. She stood there for a long moment, staring at that small chair that had never been sat in, thinking about all the signs she'd seen and wondering if she should have acted sooner. Patricia found her there before the students arrived. "You saved her life," the counselor said quietly. "I should have known sooner. I should have pushed harder in the first week." "You did exactly what you were supposed to do. You observed, you documented, you acted when you had cause. You followed protocol, and more importantly, you followed your instincts. That little girl is safe because of you." Over the following weeks, Eleanor received updates through Jennifer Martinez. Ava had been placed with experienced foster parents, Helen and David Morrison, who had raised numerous children from traumatic backgrounds. The first few days had been difficult. Ava refused to sit, refused to eat without permission, stood rigid in corners waiting for corrections that never came. But slowly, with patience and consistent gentleness, she was beginning to understand that this new world operated differently. Jennifer called Eleanor one afternoon during her planning period with an update that made her smile through tears. "She sat at the dinner table last night," Jennifer said, "all on her own. Helen said they were eating spaghetti, and Ava had been standing beside her chair like always. Then their dog came over and put his head in her lap. Well, would have been her lap if she'd been sitting. Ava looked at the dog, looked at Helen, and Helen just smiled and said, "He likes you. He wants to be close to you." And Ava sat down. Just like that. She sat down and pet the dog and ate her dinner, sitting like it was the most natural thing in the world. Eleanor pressed her hand to her mouth, overcome with emotion. How is she doing otherwise? Better every day. She's in therapy twice a week with a specialist in childhood trauma. She still has nightmares, still has moments where she panics about breaking rules that don't exist anymore. But Helen says she smiled yesterday. A real smile, not the polite one she'd been trained to give. She was playing with building blocks and she made a tower, and when it fell over, instead of freezing in fear, she laughed. "That's wonderful," Eleanor whispered. "There's something else. She asks about you. She wants to know if you're okay, if you're still teaching, if you still have the reading corner with the cushions. Helen thinks it might be helpful for her recovery if you could visit if you're comfortable with that." "Of course, any time. Just tell me when." The visit was arranged for a Saturday afternoon 2 weeks later. Eleanor drove to the Morrison home with butterflies in her stomach, carrying a bag of children's books she'd carefully selected, stories about brave girls, about finding home, about being loved. Helen Morrison answered the door, a warm woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a welcoming smile. "Ms. Brooks, thank you for coming." "Ava has been watching the window for the past hour." Eleanor barely made it through the doorway before a small body collided with her legs. Ava wrapped her arms around Eleanor's waist, her face pressed against the teacher's stomach. "You came," Ava said, her voice muffled. "You really came." Eleanor knelt down, cupping Ava's face gently. The little girl looked different, healthier. The dark circles under her eyes were fading, and there was a softness to her expression that hadn't been there before. "Of course I came. I told you you'd always be in my heart. I know, but I thought maybe once I left school, you'd forget about me." "Never, sweetheart. Never." They spent the afternoon in the Morrisons' cozy living room. Ava showed Eleanor her new bedroom, painted a soft lavender with white furniture and shelves full of toys and books. There was a comfortable chair in the corner with cushions, and Ava sat in it proudly. "I can sit whenever I want here," she said, "on chairs, on the floor, on my bed. Helen says bodies are meant to rest, and sitting is resting, and resting is good." "Helen is absolutely right," Eleanor said, settling onto the floor beside the chair. "How do you like your new school?" Ava's face lit up. "I sit at my desk all day, well, except during recess when I run around. And my teacher, Mrs. Kim, she's really nice. She doesn't know about before. She just thinks I'm a regular kid." "You are a regular kid, Ava." "I'm starting to feel like one." Ava hesitated, then climbed down from the chair to sit next to Eleanor on the floor. "Can I tell you something?" "Anything." "Sometimes I still hear my mom's voice in my head, telling me all the rules. Sometimes I wake up and forget where I am, and I think I'm going to get corrected for sleeping wrong or breathing too loud or something. And I get scared." Eleanor's heart ached. "That's normal, sweetheart. What happened to you was very hard, and it's going to take time for your mind to understand that you're safe now. But it will get easier. Every day it will get a little bit easier." Helen says that too. And my therapist, Dr. Sarah. They both say the scared feelings will get smaller and smaller until one day I'll barely remember them. They're right, and you know what? You're incredibly brave. Braver than most adults I know. Ava leaned against Eleanor's shoulder. "I'm glad you called those people that day. I was so scared when it was happening, but now I'm glad." "Is that bad?" Is it bad that I'm glad I don't live with my mom and dad anymore? No, honey, it's not bad at all. It means you understand that what was happening wasn't okay. That's very smart. Do you think they'll ever stop being angry at me? Eleanor chose her words carefully. What happened wasn't your fault, Ava. You didn't do anything wrong. Your parents made choices that hurt you, and now they're facing consequences for those choices. Whether they understand that or not isn't something you need to worry about. Your job is just to be a kid, to heal, to grow up happy and healthy. They read books together, sitting side by side on the soft carpet. Ava curled up against Eleanor like it was the most natural thing in the world, pointing at pictures and asking questions and laughing at the funny parts. When it was time for Eleanor to leave, Ava walked her to the door but didn't cry. "Will you come back?" she asked. "If Helen and David say it's okay, and if you want me to, I'll visit as often as I can. I want you to. You're my favorite teacher ever." Eleanor hugged her tight. "You're my favorite student ever." Over the following months, Eleanor visited regularly. She watched Ava transform from a frightened, rigidly controlled little girl into a vibrant, curious child. Ava joined a soccer team and came home muddy and exhausted and happy. She made friends at her new school, had play dates, went to birthday parties. She learned to ask for what she wanted, to say no when she didn't want something, to express her feelings instead of burying them. The legal case against Ava's parents moved forward. Eleanor testified at the trial, describing what she'd observed, the bruises, Ava's fear. The notebook with its desperate scrawlings was entered into evidence, along with the photographs of Ava's injuries. The defense argued that the parents were simply strict, that their methods were harsh, but came from love, that they'd never intended to harm their daughter. But the jury saw through it. They saw the systematic nature of the abuse, the way these parents had isolated and controlled their child, the physical and emotional damage they'd inflicted in the name of making her perfect. The verdict came back guilty on multiple counts of child abuse and endangerment. Ava's parents were sentenced to prison time and permanently lost their parental rights. The Morrisons began the process of adopting Ava, and the little girl bloomed under their care. A year after that fateful day when Ava's backpack fell and everything changed, Eleanor received an invitation to a celebration at the Morrison home. When she arrived, she found a house full of people. The Morrisons' extended family, Ava's therapist, Jennifer from CPS, even Patricia from school. Ava ran to greet her, wearing a bright yellow dress and a huge smile. "Miss Brooks, come see, come see." She pulled Eleanor into the dining room, where a cake sat on the table. Written in frosting were the words, "1 year of freedom." "It's been 1 whole year since I went to live with Helen and David," Ava explained. "Dr. Sarah says that's a really important anniversary, so we're celebrating. And we couldn't celebrate without you because you're the one who saved me." Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes. "You saved yourself, sweetheart. You were brave enough to tell the truth." "We both did it," Ava said firmly. "Together." Later, as Eleanor watched Ava run around the backyard with the Morrison family's dog, laughing and free and utterly, beautifully ordinary, she felt Helen step up beside her. "Thank you," Helen said quietly, "for seeing her, for not giving up, for giving us the chance to love this incredible child." "Thank you for loving her," Eleanor replied, "for showing her what real love looks like." "Can I tell you something?" Helen said. "Last week, Ava told me she wants to be a teacher when she grows up. She says she wants to help kids who are scared, like Ms. Brooks helped her." Eleanor smiled through her tears. She'd be amazing at it. The celebration wound down as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Ava gave Eleanor a picture she'd drawn, a crayon illustration of a classroom with a little girl sitting at a desk, smiling. In the corner, a teacher stood with a heart above her head. "That's you and me," Ava explained, "on the day I learned I could sit." Eleanor carefully folded the picture and tucked it into her purse like the treasure it was. "I'll keep this forever." "Good. Because I'll remember forever, too. I'll remember that you saw me when I was invisible, and you helped me when I was scared, and you taught me that I deserved to be safe." As Eleanor drove home that evening, she thought about all the children sitting in classrooms across the country, children with secrets, children carrying invisible burdens, children waiting for someone to notice. She thought about how easy it would have been to dismiss Ava's standing as quirky behavior, to accept the surface explanation, to not look deeper. She thought about the responsibility teachers carried, the way they were often the first line of defense for vulnerable children, the importance of trusting instincts and following through even when it was hard. And she thought about Ava, sitting freely now, playing and laughing and dreaming about her future. A future that almost didn't happen. The next Monday, Eleanor returned to her classroom with renewed purpose. She looked at each of her students with fresh eyes, wondering what stories they might be carrying, what help they might need, what signs she might need to watch for. On her desk, she placed Ava's drawing in a simple frame where she could see it every day, a reminder of why this work mattered, of how paying attention could change a life, of how one person's decision to act could mean the difference between suffering and safety. The school year continued, bringing new students and new challenges. But Eleanor never forgot Ava's lesson, that sometimes the smallest behaviors reveal the biggest cries for help, and that listening, really listening to children, could save lives. Several months later, Eleanor received a package in the mail. Inside was a photograph of Ava sitting cross-legged on a beach, building a sandcastle, her face tilted toward the sun. On the back, in Helen's handwriting, "She sits everywhere now. Thank you for making this possible." And beneath that, in Ava's careful kindergarten handwriting, "I love you, Ms. Brooks. You are my hero." Eleanor placed the photo next to the drawing on her desk, creating a small shrine to hope and healing. Every time a student seemed to struggle in an unusual way, every time behavior didn't quite add up, every time her instincts whispered that something was wrong, she looked at those images and remembered. She remembered that children deserve to be protected, that teachers have the power to change lives, and that sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is refuse to look away from suffering. Ava's story had a happy ending, but Eleanor knew not every story would. Some children she couldn't save, some situations were too complex, some systems moved too slowly. But she could try. She could pay attention, ask questions, follow through, and trust her instincts. And in a world where children sometimes suffered in silence, where abuse hid behind closed doors and polite smiles, that commitment to vigilance mattered more than anything. Because somewhere out there was always another child standing when they should be sitting, carrying burdens too heavy for small shoulders, waiting for someone to notice. And Eleanor Brooks would keep noticing. If this story touched you, if it reminded you of the importance of protecting children and listening to the quiet signs of distress, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Share it with teachers, parents, coaches, or anyone who works with children. Leave a comment telling us what you think. Your engagement helps us reach more people with stories that matter. And most importantly, if you ever suspect a child is being harmed, don't hesitate. Trust your instincts. Make the call. Be the person who notices. You could save a life.